Breakups are never easy, especially when it comes to tango. And especially when it comes to tango and also being young and not having a lot of experience with breakups outside of tango. And for me, I went through so many iterations of that process inside of tango since I started that it seems that there are ways to go through the process and take away from it the lessons that you need without having to quit dancing. But it takes time to figure out how to do that. And recently, I got an email from someone who described a situation that sounded so much like mine from a few years ago. And it sounds so much like so many other stories that I've heard from women from around the world, really, that I decided to do an episode dedicated specifically to this question of how do we process a breakup within the tango community, someone that you have a relationship with, and what do you do afterwards? How do you move on? How do you decide whether to continue speaking with that person, dancing with them, acknowledging them? Do you move away? Do you stop going to the milongas that they go to, which that happens quite a bit. You know, I hear a lot of people having to make these decisions about attending certain milongas or certain events based on their exes being there. So this particular email, which I will paraphrase for you, hit on a lot of very common issues. And it came from a woman who said that she just ended a multi-year relationship with someone, and it was a pretty traumatic, toxic relationship that ultimately involved an affair with someone else inside the community as well. And one thing she said was that her intuition was screaming at her the whole time, but he managed to make excuses that were believable, and she disregarded her intuition and continued the relationship with this person until it finally sort of blew up, which is a very typical story within tango. Unfortunately, I hope with time we'll have less and less of these kinds of situations, but it does seem to happen on a regular basis. Now, her question to me, the reason why she messaged was exactly to say, you know, I love tango, I miss it, but I don't know if I can go back. I don't know if I can go to a milonga and see this person. And what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to just pretend like nothing happened and be all cheerful? And what if I am nice to them and I end up falling for them again, and I end up, you know, coming back and being fooled again? You know, there's all these fears, which I very much resonate with. I had the same fears because I was in a long-term relationship with another tango dancer for a number of years. And it was an unhealthy, toxic relationship. It was better for me not to be in it. And I knew that, and I sort of couldn't figure out how to get out of it because emotionally you get so entwined with the person. I tried to end things several times. I tried to sort of transition out of being connected with this person multiple times. And on a number of occasions, I failed. My resolve failed, and I reconnected with them, and we continued our relationship when it was well past its expiration date. So there's that fear of falling back into that energy, and of course, you want to protect yourself against that. On the other hand, there's this question of, she really loves tango, and maybe just pretending that nothing happened and everything's fine is a way for her to continue in tango, right? So there's that question of what is the right thing to do in this situation. Of all the experiences, emotional experience that we might go through in tango, I think this one's probably the most dramatic, the most intense, the most painful. And if we can make it to the other side of it, especially on the first one, because for some of us, we're going to end up having multiple relationships inside tango, and we'll be dating different dancers within the community, and then we'll see them after we broke up, right? So to make it past that first one will make it that much easier to go forward, to continue and to do it in a way that aligns better with your values and ultimately what you really want. Because obviously, when we start dating within tango, it's not because we're really looking for a lot of drama and all this pain, right? We're going into it with the intention of really connecting with someone deeply, to find someone that we can really experience this beautiful energy with. I definitely shared in that desire, and I pursued it wholeheartedly for a long time. And funnily enough, and this might be a topic for a separate banter, but it wasn't until I actually gave up my search for it that I ended up finding my present husband, with whom I connected from this place of having given up on the idea, because I felt so battered by the experience of dating inside the dance community. And I was not necessarily just sticking to tango. I was also active in the fusion community in Portland. So I ended up sparking relationships with different people along the way, and getting caught up in a lot of unnecessary drama where I look back and kind of cringe at my own immaturity. So I got caught up in a lot of drama that really didn't need to be there, but somehow I had to go through it, right? And so for all of us going into tango at whatever stage, some people go into tango and they're not necessarily in a place where they're looking for a relationship. They already have partners. So for them, it's a very different experience. They're not looking for that. But for many of us, we do go into it single, and we are interested in finding someone to connect with. And it's definitely, it definitely makes sense that we would make mistakes and we would not get it right the first time. And it's just it's like a rite of passage, I guess. So once you go through that pain and you feel that betrayal, that somebody that you connected with so deeply on the dance floor, and then you proceeded to have some sort of connection over time, and then the big heartbreak happens, and you feel insulted and betrayed, and if there's an affair involved, which in tango as well, we all know there's certain members of the community who are players and who will do that. They will date multiple women at the same time, and they will keep it a secret. That's just part of the ecosystem. There are people like that. And so that's kind of like the worst of the worst that can happen, right? You're trusted this person, and now they cheated on you, and now it's painful and you're ready to like give up tango because you don't want to see this person again. I actually got into tango because I liked a guy, and we ended up being together for 4.5 years. And when we broke up, I felt that way where like I could not manage to even like be in the same space with him. I moved. I literally moved to a different state. But there's only so many times you could do that. So I did that, and that is an option. So for some of us, it's that dramatic. We break up with someone and that relationship is so epic that we need to like move geographically away from it. So I get it. So that's an option. But hopefully there are ways to do it where you don't necessarily need to do that. So I'm going to briefly go through some of the suggestions I made to this woman who messaged me. And I hope to strike a chord with those of you who are going through this process. And I would love to hear from you if this speaks to you, and if you have other questions, or if you want to share, your process that helped you get over a breakup in tango that was really severe. Go ahead and reach out to me. I love hearing from you. The best way to reach me is through Facebook Messenger or Instagram Messenger. You can find me on both through I Am So Tango, IMSO Tango. And also, just a quick plug once again for my Facebook group. If you want to join the conversation in a more systematic way inside a group where we have these conversations on a weekly basis, check out the link in the show notes. So the first suggestion I have is to really reconnect with your own love for tango. I noticed for myself that I got into tango because I liked a guy, but I stayed in tango because I love tango. And that's a situation for many people. I've heard this same story for many dancers who got into tango because they were dating someone, and you started together, or they pulled you into it, and then the relationship didn't last. So if you stuck it out and you continued to dance beyond a particular relationship, it really was because you discovered a love for your own dance. And for myself, and I think this might be the case for a lot of women, when we end up dancing and then dating somebody inside tango, it's almost like the relationship eclipses our own dance. Like somehow the dance becomes secondary to the relationship. So we don't dance as much because we choose to spend more time with our partner. And we might choose not to dance with some other people because we want to reserve the dances for our partner or something like that. I did that a lot. And so eventually, it's like the relationship is the source of your creative satisfaction, your romantic satisfaction. The relationship kind of becomes the be all of everything. And when we break up with that person and that resource is not there anymore, that source of affirmation, that source of love, it feels like there's nothing there. We're like so alone, and it's in that moment that it's kind of like this call to remind yourself why you even started dancing. What was it that drew you? Because it wasn't possibly it might have been another person, but if you stayed in it, it wasn't because of a person. It was because of how tango made you feel, what you experienced inside yourself. And that's really the starting point. So for me, actually, I noticed through my journey with tango that whenever I would break up, that's when I would start dancing a lot. And of course, and I'll go into it, like how I managed seeing my exes and like what I did. That was there. That was part of the journey. But as soon as possible, I made it a rule for myself to really honor the dancer that I am outside of the relationship first and reconnect with what is it that I want as a dancer. And so it might be that you decide you want to dance a different dance, try a different dance form, go try salsa, go try swing. That might be a step in the direction of you kind of reconnecting with that. Or it might be going to different milongas than you're used to and dancing with different people, traveling to different events so that you're not in the same room and you just experience tango without your partner and sort of find your flow in it. And that can be pretty scary. I always remember this woman who sat down next to me at this very traditional weekly milonga, Cachirulo, in Buenos Aires, that's been going on for decades. I mean, it's one of the longest running milongas. And this beautiful woman, probably in her 50s, early 60s, she sat down next to me and she said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so nervous." She started talking about how nervous she was, how scared she was, because it was her first time, her very first time to go out to a milonga by herself because her partner, her husband or something didn't go. And she made this decision to go to the milonga by herself. And I thought it was so funny that she was so scared because I was like, "What do you mean you're gorgeous? You're going to be dancing within seconds." And she was. I checked in with her later in the night and she was like, "Yeah, I don't know what I was worried about." But, depending on where we're coming from, sometimes that first step needs to be just sort of allowing yourself to experience that emptiness, that awareness of that person isn't there and tango still goes on for you and you want to reconnect with that. Now, if you decide, I should even say when you decide to go back to the milonga where you will see your ex again, which will happen ultimately because especially if you're in the same community, a lot of times there's only so much you can do before you end up in the same space. What I recommend is to clearly set boundaries for yourself around what you want to experience around your ex. Not to go into the milonga wondering what they're going to do, but to decide for yourself what is appropriate. And for some situations and some people, it is appropriate and maybe even healthy to just reconnect with that person and become friends and continue dancing and carry on a relationship with them that looks different than it did, but it's very close. I've seen that in action and it does happen. So you could do that, but only if that is something that you yourself want. Like you really want to spend time with them and it doesn't matter that you're not romantic. You just want to hang out with them. That's a good reason. But if it's anything other than that, maybe they're a really good dancer and you really want to continue dancing with them. So you'll make that compromise that you'll hang around them because you want to dance with them. Not a good reason. I would make the boundary exactly the way you want, and you get to define that for yourself. And you don't have to explain that boundary to anyone else. And you don't have to explain that boundary to your ex. You just assert that for yourself. So some people, myself included, have done this where you just ignore the other person. You just don't acknowledge their presence. You don't make eye contact. You don't say hello. You don't dance with them. It's like they're not even there. And guess what? You can do that in a public space at a milonga with other people there, you know, I imagine some people might say, well, what if it's like a small community and there's not that many people? Sure, maybe you do need to like acknowledge them, but it's totally on limit for you to just be like, they're not there. I'm not going to interact with them. If they are in one corner of the room, I'm going to go to the other side of the room and I will do what I need to do to keep my focus away from them. Because a lot of times that's the battle, right? You go there and you're fixated on them and who they're dancing with and what they're doing and whether they look like they're enjoying themselves. And you got to be kind of strict with yourself and really exercise this muscle of focusing your mind on something different. And just, even if you can only do it for 15 minutes and then you have to leave, fine. But it is possible to just avert your eyes and go somewhere else and talk to someone else, seek out someone else to dance with, and practice that. And you get better at it. And those boundaries, I think, when they're very clear, they're not that difficult. You know, it's just the ambiguity is very difficult. If you go in and you kind of don't know what you want to do and you're not sure and you're going to decide in the moment, that's when it becomes really painful because you're sort of expecting something. And it does seem like it would be more painful to just cut the person off completely. But ultimately, in some situations, it's healthier. And that's what I've had to do with some people in my life. I actually sent people a message, certain people, and said, like, goodbye, I never want to speak to you again. And I haven't. And it was just this clear boundary for myself that I needed to establish, whether or not it's right for that person, whether or not it's painful for them, whether or not they're going to be hurt from it is not my concern. And I think that's a really important mindset to have when you're going through a breakup, is that the other person and what they're doing is not your concern anymore. And for you to move on, it has to be an actionable mindset, something that you act out. You act like it. You act like you don't care what's going on with that person, even though the emotional reality of it might be different. You might be really hurt still. You might still be crying. I get it. But remember the first part, you're reconnecting with your own tango. So dance it out. Take it out on the dance floor. Dance that pain out. Dance the hurt. Dance the anger. And just really feel that that's your source of healing, is the dance itself. And those boundaries will make it that much more possible for you to go through this process quicker, right? Like if you establish the boundaries, the sooner you will just reconnect with your dance and process those emotions, the sooner you will connect with other people and you will feel stronger, that's kind of what I always wanted to feel whenever I broke up with someone. There was always this feeling of such weakness, and I was sort of struggling to find strength again and willpower, right? Because, depending on how fresh the wound is, how long the relationship was, how painful it is, like it can completely immobilize you for weeks, right? So, we have to know how to deal with this process as we go through it. Now, step number 3 really is very much connected, and I kind of alluded to it, and that is connecting with other people and finding people to talk to and different social scenes to plug into, I think will be another safety net that will help you to build a new kind of relationship to the other person. especially when you have people around you who you can confide in and you can talk about your situation, I find that it helps me be more committed because now somebody else understands what I'm going through and they're sort of rooting for me. So they can be sort of a reality check for me and they can help me whenever I'm feeling really emotional and I'm on the verge of making that really poor decision of sending that text or saying something that I'm going to regret. That person or those people can be there to sort of help insulate you a little bit. And I found that my girlfriends these days, who I have found along the way, I have, a set of girlfriends that I rely on. They're the ones that I go to first whenever I'm dealing with some sort of really acute emotional experience that I'm about to do something that's going to, that I possibly will regret. I go to other people, I go to my friends. And that's why I'm including that as one of the most important aspects of getting over a breakup and processing that is definitely to make sure you're opening yourself up to new people, new perspectives. And the last step to processing a breakup, which I think is in some ways most important because it's the one that's going to make sure that the next time something like this happens, you do something different. Because, we're going to continue being in relationships and we're going to continue connecting with people and we're going to continue trusting people and our hearts will be broken again and again. So step number 4 is to really focus on the lesson that you learned or lessons that you learned from this particular relationship. And what I told this particular woman and what I also experienced for myself is that the main lesson for her was that she now knows that she did not listen to her intuition, and her intuition was right. And so it's a priceless gift that she earned. She earned this. It's hers. She will always know this now, that she was aware that her intuition was screaming at her and she did not listen. And then her intuition was right. When I learned this myself, when I experienced several times, it took several times for me to see this in action, where my intuition is loud and clear about someone and their actions and the meaning of their words. And I just don't trust my intuition. I take the other person and their word. And then you learn, and it's painful. And it's like, it's so frustrating. How did I let this happen? Oh my God, I was so stupid. I knew it. I knew there was something wrong. But the only way we can really know our intuition is through this process of making these mistakes, of not trusting and then learning that we didn't trust and that backfired, right? So the next time that our intuition says something, hopefully, because we've learned this lesson, we're going to listen and say no to the red flags. And in that way, prevent these kinds of situations from happening. When I was in my own version of this kind of toxic relationship that she's describing, I remember there was a quote I read somewhere, which I don't remember word for word, but the meaning of it was that other people will disrespect you only to the level that you disrespect yourself. And when that line is crossed, you step up and you put your foot down and you say you demand more respect. But when I read that, I realized that my toxic relationship with my boyfriend at the time was very much something that I allowed, that I rejected and refused to listen to my intuition on so many occasions for so long, that the result of it was that I had so little respect for myself that I was intimately involved with the person who abused me and who had no respect for me. So when I finally made it to the other side, which it took me a long time to disconnect from him, when I made it to the other side, looking back, I said the same thing. I was like, oh my God, what was I thinking? All of those red flags, all of these experiences that pointed to the fact that this is such an unhealthy relationship. Why was I not listening to that? And so these 4 steps for me: reconnecting with your own dance, your own love for the dance, for tango, for movement, for your own creative expression, setting clear boundaries, whether that means really not being around that person ever or interacting with them to whatever degree. You define that. Don't wait for the other person to define that. The point is that you keep dancing, that you keep yourself moving forward in your own growth rather than giving up the dance. And I said to this woman, I left her a long voicemail, and I was like, whoever this is, they're not worth your dance, right? Like, they're just not worth it. They don't deserve you giving up your dance forever because they disrespected you. Like, if anything, you need to show them. You need to show them what you got. Step 3, surrounding yourself with people who can help you process. And then finally, really learning your lesson and reflecting on your experience in a constructive way. Just understanding yourself better and why you allowed this person in your life and what role were they fulfilling and what boundaries did you not set with them that you are now going to set every time that you date someone, what sorts of things you're not going to allow for going forward. I think all of those questions are really cool to address now because the pain is raw. So those are my thoughts on this particular topic. Would love to hear how they're landing for you. If you are a fan of the show and you would like to help it grow, please, I would love to get a 5-star review from you on Apple Podcasts. And of course, if you want to comment, if you're watching this on YouTube, leave your questions and comments below. I always love hearing from you. Until next time, ciao.